She was not loud like thunder, nor bright like the morning sun. She was quiet, the kind of quiet that heals, that holds broken things together, that speaks without words. Her silence was never emptiness. It was full of thoughts, full of love, full of prayers. When the world shouted, she stayed calm. When pain knocked, she opened the door with grace. And in that quietness, you could hear her heart whisper to God. She never argued with fate. She never questioned why life was cruel. She only bowed her head and smiled, as if her pain was a secret between her and heaven. She had faith the way oceans have depth, unseen, endless, and beautiful. People thought she said nothing, but they didn't understand. Her silence was a language. It said everything that words could never hold. Each sigh was a chapter, each glance a poem, each tear a sacred prayer. When she sat alone, the air around her changed. It became soft, like the calm before rain, because angels love to linger where patience lives. Her eyes carried both sorrow and peace. You could look into them and see 1,000 unspoken dreams, some broken, some still glowing, but all surrendered to the will of God. She taught me that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes power kneels. Sometimes power waits. Sometimes power forgives. Even when the heart is bleeding. She showed me that silence is not weakness. It is the highest form of prayer. When words fail, faith begins. And she lived her whole life between those two sacred places, where speech ends and belief begins. Crescent moon, she was the kind of woman who didn't ask for miracles. She created them quietly. She prayed for others. When no one prayed for her, she gave blessings to the same people who hurt her. And that's how I knew she wasn't ordinary. She was chosen. At night, when the world slept, she would sit by the window, her eyes lifted to the stars. No words escaped her lips, only sighs, only breaths that carried unseen pain. To the one who listens without being told, she never asked for much. She never begged for comfort. Her prayers were soft, like whispers wrapped in tears, like petals falling into divine hands. If you listened closely, you could almost hear her heart speaking, not in words, but in the rhythm of surrender. Her silence wasn't empty. It was filled with 1,000 prayers that only heaven could translate. She cried without sound. Even her tears were polite. They never demanded attention. But every drop that fell was heavy with stories of things she never said, hurts she never showed, and hopes she never lost. Some nights, she'd press her hand against her chest, as if trying to hold her soul together, and whisper under her breath, "God, give me strength, not for me, but for those who depend on me." That was her secret. Even in her pain, she prayed for others first. She wasn't the kind of woman who cursed her fate. She was the kind who thanked God for giving her a heart still capable of love. Even after being broken, her silence carried dignity, a royal calm, as if she had made peace with every storm. When others shouted in anger, she smiled. When others walked away, she blessed them. And when life turned cruel, she bowed lower in prayer. I often wondered how she did it, how she survived, without screaming her pain into the world. But now I know. Her strength came from faith, not fury. Her comfort came from surrender, not revenge. She believed that the one above heard even her silence. Every sunrise was her answer. Every breath she took was a reward. Sometimes, I caught her staring into nothing, eyes distant, lips moving without sound. She wasn't lost. She was speaking to her Lord. She trusted him more than she trusted her own tears. And that is how she lived, broken on earth, but whole in faith. Crescent moon. People like her don't need applause. They don't need crowns or fame, because they already wear the invisible crown of patience, forged by pain, polished by tears, and blessed by God Himself. She was not loud, but she was heard by heaven. She walked through life softly, like a prayer taking human form. The world misunderstood her quietness, but heaven never did. They thought her silence meant weakness, but silence was her shield, her strength, her secret kingdom. She wore it like a crown, not made of gold, but of patience, faith, and pain she never shared. When life threw storms her way, she didn't shout at the sky. She stood still, closed her eyes, and let the wind test her heart, because she knew God doesn't test the weak. He tests the chosen. And she was one of them, chosen to carry quiet courage, to bear unseen battles, to teach the world that even silence can roar. Her hands were small, but they carried worlds. Her shoulders bent, but they never broke. And her heart, it was a universe of forgiveness. She forgave people who never apologized. She prayed for those who never remembered her. She smiled for those who gave her tears. And still, she called it love. I used to wonder how she kept going, how she smiled when everything inside her was falling apart. But now I know it was faith, pure and fierce. She believed that every hurt had a reason, that every delay was divine timing, and that one day her silence would speak louder than her pain. People admired beauty, but I admired her patience, because beauty fades, but patience glows forever. And in her silence, there was a light that made even the angels pause. She didn't raise her voice. She raised her soul. And that is far more powerful than any scream could ever be. When the world ignored her, God noticed. When the world mocked her tears, He counted every one. And when she thought she was alone, He was beside her, listening to the silence that no one else could hear. Her calmness was divine. It wasn't learned. It was gifted. She was built to endure, not to impress. Crescent moon. She was proof that you don't need to speak to be understood by heaven. All you need is a heart that whispers truth and a soul that kneels in faith. She lived quietly, but her story echoes loudly in every heart that ever loved in silence, that ever prayed in tears, that ever forgave without being asked. One day, the house felt different. Too still, too cold, too quiet even for her kind of silence. The chair where she used to sit was empty. The prayer mat was folded, her shawl neatly placed, as if she had known she would not return. The woman whose silence spoke to heaven had spoken her last prayer, and heaven finally answered. People who once ignored her suddenly began to whisper her name. They said, "She was such a kind soul. She never complained. She always smiled." But I stood there, listening to them, wondering, where were these words when she was alive? When she cried quietly, so no one would see? They came to honor her now, but she needed none of it. Her crown was already waiting above, woven by angels from the threads of her patience. The world saw her silence as weakness. Now they saw it as wisdom. They saw her as fragile. Now they called her strong. And I realized, sometimes you have to die for the world to hear what your silence tried to say in life. As I stood by her grave, the air was soft. The earth newly turned. I knelt, pressed my hand on the soil, and whispered, "You didn't need to speak. You taught me everything without words." And for a moment, I swear I felt her warm, like the air around me bowed, as if heaven itself was listening too. Her silence didn't end with her breath. It lingers still, in every dawn I wake to, in every prayer I whisper, in every act of kindness I try to do, because she lives on, in the peace she left behind. Her absence is not empty. It's sacred, like a temple built of memories, where her love still prays for me. Now, when life grows heavy, I remember her face. The calm, the softness, the patience shining through pain. And I tell myself, if she could endure, so can I. Because she taught me that strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's steady. It's holy. Crescent moon. Every night, before I sleep, I whisper her favorite words. God, protect those I love. And I know, somewhere beyond stars and skies, she's whispering the same for me. She no longer speaks, but her silence still feeds my soul, still guards my path, still teaches me to believe. Years have passed, but her presence never faded. She's gone from my eyes, yet somehow, she lives in everything that is gentle, in the wind that touches my face, in the stillness before dawn, in the quiet faith that holds me together. Her silence still speaks, not from her lips, but from the lessons she left behind. Every calm moment I find in chaos, every prayer I whisper in pain, every tear I hide behind a smile, they are all pieces of her within me. People ask, how did she bear so much? And I say, she didn't just bear it. She turned her pain into prayer. She turned her loneliness into light. She made her silence holy. Now I understand. Some women are sent by God, not to be understood, but to teach the world what real grace looks like. Her love didn't end when her heartbeat stopped. It became eternal. A soft voice in my soul that says, be kind, even when no one is watching. Pray, even when words fail. And never forget, God hears what silence hides. Sometimes, I feel her in the smallest things. The way sunlight falls across the floor. The way peace fills me after prayer. The way tears turn sweet when I think of her smile. That's how I know she never truly left. She just moved closer to heaven. She taught me that not every victory is loud. Not every warrior carries a sword. Some fight battles within, with patience as their armor, and silence as their shield. And now, when I face my storms, I remember her eyes, the quiet strength inside them, the peace that no pain could break. And I whisper, this is how she lived, and this is how I will too. She once told me, the loudest prayers are the ones you never hear. And now I know she was right. Because even in her silence, God was listening. Even when her lips stayed still, He answered. And even now, her blessings follow me like sunlight follows dawn. Crescent moon. She was never a woman of many words, but she spoke 1,000 prayers. Through every act of love, every quiet sacrifice, every tear she turned into light. She was not a queen by title, but by soul. And her throne, it wasn't made of gold, but of faith, humility, and a silence that still moves heaven. When my time comes, and I close my eyes for the last time, I hope to find her waiting, just like before, smiling softly, her eyes full of peace. And I will say, Mother, your silence taught me everything. And she'll whisper, my child, you listened well.